As the battle over San Diego's hike in the minimum wage gets nasty, grocery shoppers are caught in the crossfire. A smart growth leader quietly leaves City Hall just a year after being appointed by ex-mayor Bob Filner. And the Padres owners decide to name a section of Petco Park to honor this guy, a plan which strikes some Padre fans as an error. I'm Mark Sauer, and the KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome. It's Friday, August 29th. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today are KPBS Enterprise reporter Claire Tregesser, Dave Rowland, editor of San Diego City Beat, and reporter Dean Calbreth of the San Diego Daily Transcript. Well, San Diego is one of America's most expensive cities. Housing, energy, and water costs are all chart toppers here compared with other places. So it's not surprising that the City Council voted to hike the minimum wage over the objections of the Republican mayor and business community. And that set up a political battle that's already gotten nasty. So, Claire, start us off here by telling us what's in that minimum wage hike that the City Council passed.
Okay, so if for some reason they don't get enough signatures to overturn it, wages would go from $9 to $9.75 an hour at the start of this year, and then rise incrementally up to $11.50 an hour by 2017. Also include 5 earned sick days a year for employees. Okay,
and we've got this coalition, as you mentioned. They're out with, and we'll get to this petition gathering here in a moment. But who are they? Who's the coalition that doesn't want this minimum wage hike?
Well, it's called the San Diego Small Business Coalition, and they kind of kicked it off with a group of small business owners. There's also Revolvis Consulting is helping them out. Behind it, Jason Rowe is one of the founders of Revolvis, and he's kind of the face of this movement. He is, and they are, one of the biggest Republican consulting firms in town, at least in the state, maybe. And they've worked on Kevin Faulconer's mayoral campaign, previous Republican mayoral campaigns in the past.
And it's largely driven by the Chamber of Commerce, the Regional Chamber of Commerce as well.
Okay, so these folks, they need to get roughly 34,000 petitions signed, signatures by
September 17th.
So they got 30 days from the time the council
passed it, right?
All right, and I don't know. That's where we want to really get into in this discussion here, because it got nasty fairly early on, right? Accusations from both sides. So there's not just the petition gatherers out there who are going to confront you at the grocery store and say, "Hey, sign this." It's some folks who are also going to be out there, maybe burned from the whole Barrio Logan petition campaign.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's different, is because last year they did a referendum to overturn this community plan update for Barrio Logan, and that seemed to go pretty much uncontested. People just went out. A lot of people felt like signature gatherers were lying consistently throughout that referendum drive.
In fact, they even took that to court and lost.
Right. And so this time there's this group called Raise Up San Diego, which is kind of organized by the Center on Policy Initiatives, and they're sending people out to stand right across from the signature gatherer saying, "Don't sign their petition, don't sign their petition," to every person who comes in or out of the grocery store.
Yeah, and that's actually boosted the costs of the petition drive. Normally a petition drive like this would be about 300,000 or something. They've banked about 500,000 because they think that the opposition might have an impact on their petition gatherers.
And the heart of that cost is they're paying these petition gatherers. They get what, $2 a signature generally? Is that
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that obviously is going to run into some money, even at 34,000, which doesn't sound like a lot of signatures. Now,
well, and they need a lot more than that too, because they need 33,800 and something.
Jason Rowe told me they're aiming for 50,000 because people will sign it who aren't registered voters, or might sign it twice,
they have to have valid signatures, eligible voters.
So of course the City Council, the Democrats in the council, passed this thing led by Todd Gloria, the president of the council. He spoke on KPBS, and he was a little concerned about these petition folks gathering them and what they had to say. Let's hear a clip from him.
Essentially what you have are people who are wealthy enough to try and purchase the result that they couldn't get through the normal democratic process. The council has made a position or taken a particular tact, and we are elected by the people, and these folks simply see an opportunity to pay a couple $100,000 to some signature gatherers and overturn that result. I hope that that won't happen in this case with the minimum wage. We have too many people that are counting on an increase in their wages because they don't make enough to live here. And it would be, I think, a very sad day if a few very wealthy individuals could purchase the result that they could not get through the democratic process.
All right, so what have you folks, Dave and Claire, you've both been out reporting on this and trying to find out what's going on at the grocery stores. What are you learning? Are we seeing lying here? Have you seen any of the kind of the blatant stuff we saw in that Barrio Logan
Well,
campaign?
I haven't so much been reporting on it as opining on it, but...
But you did go out looking for gatherers.
I did go out looking for gatherers, and I couldn't find any. Somebody I know ran into one at Ralph's in Hillcrest last weekend. And that person was telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So it's been kind of a mixed bag. I wouldn't have expected, I think I was one of those people that thought we saw a lot of lying in the Barrio Logan battle. And
some of that was captured on tape. It was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and this one I thought would be really straightforward, and I underestimated the ability to embellish what was going on or outright lie about it. People are saying that the city council passed a minimum wage of $15 an hour, which is not true, and the those signature gatherers are saying, oh, this is for a more reasonable minimum wage. Right. Or they're just saying, sign this petition if you want a minimum wage. I mean, they're just turning it around.
No, so for that one, it's interesting to me because we at KPBS we collected, we said to people, send us your experiences with signature gatherers, and a lot of people said we see people out with petitions that they say are to raise the minimum wage, and so that it sounds like potentially people could be lying. But the other thing, when I was out, I saw people from Raise Up San Diego with a petition that says we support raising the minimum wage. So I didn't know if some of the people who were reporting that were actually seeing the Raise Up San Diego people. The whole petition thing seems kind of excessively confusing to me. I don't understand why they're doing that. It
absolutely is confusing, and that's probably one of the outcomes that they're hoping for, is just to confuse people so much that they just throw up their hands and say, I'm not signing anything.
Right. Well, but yeah, it is odd because they have a don't sign campaign asking them to sign something.
Yeah, sign this to say that you won't sign the other thing.
Yeah, and maybe it is a confusion wrinkle. Who knows? Now, Claire, you mentioned Jason Rowe, the spokesman for the folks who want to get this on the ballot and all, and we spoke to him, you spoke to him in the feature you did earlier this week, and he says there's no reason for gatherers to be lying. They've got a good, straightforward argument, right?
Right. Well, so he's said since my story came out that they found there was a video of one guy saying they're going to raise the wages to $15 an hour, and another video of a guy saying they're going to double the minimum wage to 50%, which doesn't even really make sense. And so he said that he found one of those people, and they say they fired him. And then he told me, there's no reason for anyone to lie. If we find out that they're lying, we're going to fire them because our argument is really the best argument. It's just, we just want to put this on the ballot. And the person that we saw doing, that's what she was doing, and it was pretty convincing. She was getting signatures left and right as we were standing there watching her. She was just saying, you don't have to decide right now, just take the time to educate yourself, sign this, then it will go to the ballot, then you can vote yes or no. You're not voting yes or no right now, you're just signing to say that we'll get a chance to vote on it.
And that's how I thought this was going to go, is that I sort of agree with Jason Rowe on that one point, that I thought their strongest thing was going to be, let's just slow down and give everybody a chance to vote on this, which to me brings up a really interesting point, which Todd Gloria just touched on in that clip that you played. And that is, he says they couldn't get their desired outcome through the normal democratic process. And I think that's a really valid point, that we've chosen a system in this country of passing laws, and that is representative democracy. We vote for the people. We send them to the city council.
They make the decisions,
and they're the ones that do the debate, do all the research. They get the advice from the staff, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff theoretically. That process, we have 6 members of the city council that are Democrats and 3 that are Republicans. And Democrats were able to get policy done, and so now it's taking only less than 34,000 people to sign a petition to get basically undo that law. I mean, not necessarily to get it killed, but it will get it delayed, and this is important. Get it delayed until June 2016.
A long chunk of time. Let's hear what Jason Rowe had to say about his argument on why they don't think this hike should go through.
Well, for starters, I think it ignores the fact that the state just implemented a 25% increase just a month ago in July. And, you know, our debate is not with the value of a minimum wage increase, but the idea that San Diego, an island by itself now, would go 44% instead of the 25% that the statewide. This disadvantages San Diego businesses. It drives up those costs, and it ultimately disadvantages those workers because we're going to have fewer jobs available as businesses contract to deal with this. They'll have to cut hours and they'll have to cut the number of employees.
All right. Now, Dean, I wanted to ask you about that because that argument is it puts in a disadvantage, it's going to cut employees, it's going to rob us of jobs, et cetera. But minimum wages have been hiked in other parts of the country, and there have been studies done on the impact. What have you learned about that?
Sure. I mean, the studies that have been done of the places that have already done this have shown that it doesn't affect inflation, which they complain about. Oh, this is going to drive prices up. It doesn't affect unemployment. It doesn't affect the employment levels of hospitality and restaurant workers, which is the main area where minimum wage workers are employed. One of the biggest impact that it does have, if you're a community such as Santa Fe, New Mexico, which has the second highest minimum wage after San Francisco, the city of Santa Fe passed its minimum wage and it began attracting low-wage workers from other places of the city. Instead of businesses moving out, it was having workers coming in to the extent that Santa Fe County, which surrounds Santa Fe City, has now adopted the same minimum wage because it couldn't face the competition from Santa Fe City.
Kind of the opposite effect or opposite argument or impact that we heard from
the same with Alameda County and San Francisco, which has the highest minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you did get a copy of this script getting back to what the petition gatherers are saying here, and what is their clear argument on the bullet points there?
Well, yeah, they showed me what they say is, it's not really necessarily, I was expecting an exact script, but it's more just a list. And I was surprised a lot of at least a third of the bullet points were all to do with unions, saying stop big unions. They almost bankrupted the city before, and here they come again. Stop big unions. A 43.75% wage hike will seriously harm our local economy. It's interesting because, I mean, unions, they don't pay their workers minimum wage, so I don't know. I think that
it's really beside the point if you look at the facts of the minimum wage.
Yeah, they're using the
catchphrase
worst
big union.
They're using the worst boogeyman that they can find to put out in front of this. And you know, Center on Policy Initiatives, which Claire mentioned earlier, is a left-leaning policy think tank, and they are closely aligned ideologically with unions, and I think get some union funding.
They've said that they're getting union funding for this Raise Up San Diego, and I think at least some of the volunteers who are going out saying don't sign their petitions are union workers.
But this isn't really a union-led thing. You know, the unions definitely support higher wages for workers, so it is right down their alley. But this isn't really driven by the unions. It's a much broader, progressive, coalition of people behind this.
Now, on the other side of the coin, well, we did have this incident here in recent days where the petition gatherers are out there with their clipboards and they're gathering petitions, and they get $2 plus per signature here. They've got a stake in it. And there was an alleged incident where when a clipboard was stolen, the petition, the signatures were taken, and what happened with that? At first there wasn't a police report, and then it turns out there was a police report.
Right. I mean, it was on last Friday, so a week ago, they said, this guy was at Avon's in Claremont. He turned his head for a second. Someone came up, stole his clipboards, were already filled with like 130 signatures or something like that. So that's like
a few $100 to him.
$260, something like that, stolen. And I tried to check up on it to see was a police report filed, because they said that one was. At first, the police said that they couldn't verify that a report had been filed. Then the day after my story was published, they came back and said, oh, the person's name was entered wrong. So actually, yes, we do have a police report for $244 worth of stolen.
Right. So it really has gotten nasty in this first week. You've got allegations and counter allegations and actions there. All right, one last note here before we shift gears on this topic here. Remind us again what happens if they do get the 34,000 and they're all valid. These signatures, they'll get it onto an election ballot. But the next one,
City Council could call a special election if they want to. I think, to have this, but there's no reason why they would do that, because the City Council wants this passed, or the majority of the City Council wants it passed. A special election is going to favor Republicans, who will probably be more likely to defeat it. So it will go until June 2016, which means that no one will get, even though their wages were supposed to rise this January, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it'll be delaying it for a year and a half.
All right, we're going to hear a lot more on this as we go along, I'm sure, here, especially with that deadline approaching. All right, we're going to pick up another topic. The news that Bill Fulton stepped down this week as the city's planning director had all but a few insiders saying, Bill who? But Dean, you profiled this smart growth guru, and we were lucky in the short time, about a year, to have this guy, according to a lot of people in the know.
No, we were very lucky. He is a nationally known, very well-respected proponent of smart growth in cities, of the kind of livable, bikeable, walkable neighborhoods that San Diego has been supporting, that Mayor Faulconer was a strong proponent of, Mayor Faulconer who brought him in. And actually, Mayor Faulconer has also been a fairly strong proponent of. They've had
kind of the anti-sprawl idea. Where
the anti-sprawl idea. You bring in infill, you have businesses and shops and other things, services, near where people live.
So we don't have to get in a car and head somewhere all the time. We can simply go down a few blocks and get to these spots.
Exactly. And that means that some neighborhoods change their character. You've got 3 or 4 story buildings lining a downtown street in the downtown of these neighborhoods.
Downtown Claremont,
exactly. Yeah, downtown Kensington.
But it's happened to some degree.
But it has happened to some degree, and it's probably what needs to happen. And it also matches what Fulton would argue. It matches what the demographics want. The millennial generation wants a place that they can bike to. They don't necessarily want to drive everywhere, as well as the aging baby boomers who aren't going to be able to drive everywhere.
And now it was said by some that former Mayor Jerry Sanders had weakened the whole planning department and the idea.
He gutted it during his administration.
How so?
He disbanded it and basically merged its functions with the permitting office, which really very strongly weakened it. Many would argue that probably Bob Fulner's smartest move as mayor, and he made plenty of dumb moves, his smartest move as mayor was probably to revitalize the organization and bring in this nationally respected figure.
For the whole smart growth thing. Well, what happened when Fulner went out? Bill Fulton kind of lost his sponsor, did he not? Well,
he kind of did, but I think there was so much momentum behind the idea of Bill Fulton and Bill Fulton's ideas for what San Diego needed to do to grow, that I think it would have been a very bad PR move on Faulconer's part if he was just decided, no, he's not my guy, he was the other guy's guy, and he's going to be out. I think there was a lot of support for, generally speaking, for what Bill Fulton was all about, but when it came down to the nitty-gritty of actually selling those ideas to these neighborhoods, that became tricky. So you have some, people who might be progressive and lean towards, somebody like Bob Fulner, who, but also like their neighborhoods the way they are. So I think Bill Fulton may have been, I don't know, I haven't talked to him about this personally, but maybe he was surprised by the challenge. But I think he was up to the challenge. He's kind of a politically savvy guy. He's up for the fight. And so I thought maybe he was going to stick it out here as long as Faulconer was behind him.
All right, in a few seconds we have left on this one. He left for greener pastures in Houston. And are we going to revert then, see the dismantling of this department, or are we going to get another
I don't
Bill
think
Fulton
so,
kind of
especially not totally revert. We might see some tinkering around the edges. Faulconer and Fulton totally disagreed about Barrio Logan, for instance. On the other hand, like I say, Faulconer has supported this mayor idea. Fulton and Faulconer met yesterday, had a very congenial conversation about the future. David Graham, who is Fulton's boss at City Hall that Faulconer appointed, he says they intend to go in the same direction. So I don't think that there will be a major change, maybe some minor changes around the edges.
It depends on whoever they hire to take the, the next position.
Any idea on the time frame of that?
They are starting their search on Tuesday, as soon as after the holiday, and they say they're looking for the same kind of guy, with a real national reputation, and they're hoping to get.
All right. Well, we'll see who they come up with. And our final segment today, the owners of the San Diego Padres have made some curious moves since taking over, but the one they made this week was a real head-scratcher for many fans. The Padres honored retiring baseball commissioner Bud Selig by naming a very visible plaza at Petco Park in his honor. And this is right off Tony Gwynn Drive Day, where most folks come in, that big brick plaza and all, and it's suddenly going to be Bud Selig Plaza. Tell us why he sometimes gets booed at All-Star games, or did before he's stepping down the...
Well, he was commissioner of baseball for 22 years, I think, and you're not the the grand poobah of something that big for that long without ruffling a lot of feathers and making moves that a lot of people don't like.
And we saw the steroid era happened under his watch.
Sure.
We lost the World Series in the playoffs one year, and that happened to be a year here in San Diego where Tony Gwynn had a shot at hitting 400.
1994, I believe, right?
Yes, and that was a real sad thing for Padre fans, because that would have been a real historical thing to see our great hitter, the late Tony Gwynn, hit 400. So Bud is not the most popular guy here.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just, and it's kind of par for the course for the Padres these days. It's just a lot of head-scratching moves. There's not a whole lot of excitement for the Padres in this city that I can discern. And it's really, the organization's really struggling right now. They've got some good young players, but they can't really seem to get any footing with the fans. And this one is just bizarre. Bud Selig has absolutely zero relationship to San Diego at all. There's nothing there.
Anyone said, why this decision could have possibly been made, or that it's about the All-Star game or something like that?
There's been some speculation. They want to get the All-Star game here. Of course, they have Petco Park, which is probably going to get an All-Star game. It's a wonderful park, a wonderful facility for that. They said that he was instrumental in getting, the ownership and lining up a deal. But that's another head-scratcher, because the previous owners here, the Moorhead Group, he kind of gave it to them on a credit card and a wink and a nod, because they didn't have enough money, and the other owners ultimately wouldn't let Jeff Moorhead buy the team.
Ultimately, to get the rug pulled out from under them.
Exactly.
Because Bud Selig is the kind of guy he likes unanimity in votes on ownership changes and all that sort of thing, and he knew he wasn't. There was a mutiny over the most recent ownership change.
Right, and you mentioned how curious it is, this move. The current owners have some baseball blue blood. They're from the Dodgers organization here, and we expect great things from them. Expected great things, but it hasn't worked out so well yet.
Well, you got to spend money. You got to spend money to make money, I guess. You got to spend money to put a team on the field, and so far they've really been unwilling to do that, or unable.
And they raised the payroll some this year, but again, mediocre in the standings and not too much excitement.
Yeah, they're in a division with the Dodgers and the Giants, who are comparatively financial powerhouses, especially the Dodgers. They can put a $225 million, on the field at any given time.
Now, when they announced this move to name this very visible plaza, as I say, after Bud Selig the other day, it really, the social media really lit up. It went on Twitter, and some of these folks, I liked one of the hashtags was BS Plaza. Of course, his initials are BS for Bud Selig, but fans just weren't sitting still for this one. Finally, they had something to root about or root against here, huh?
Yeah, I think rooting against has become a kind of a hallmark of Padres fans these days.
Yeah, I'm just not sure they really thought this one through before they made this decision.
Although this is the most discussion I've heard about the Padres all summer.
well, that's a
so
good
maybe
point.
Right, nobody's talking about him at all.
Right.
Yeah, they've been darn quiet all summer, and now everybody's got something to...
They've got everyone to pay attention to them.
Well, can they backtrack on this now? I mean, can they? Because you and I, or the four of us, can sit and think of some other folks who might be worthy. You look at Ray Kroc, the late Ray Kroc, who did keep the team from moving to Washington. They were packed up and ready to go, and he put the money down. Joan Kroc, his widow, who spent some money, got Steve Garvey and some other big names here, and they got to the World Series in '84. Trevor Hoffman. Tony Gwynn, of course, has a statue and a street there, but I mean, you would think Jerry Coleman, the late great announcer. You would think there are other folks you could name this plaza for.
Oh, sure. And you know, to your question, can they backtrack? I guess. I mean, I don't know if it was a signed contract that they would do this, that they would be legally bound to honor. But it would sure be embarrassing to say, "Oh gosh, we just didn't think that through." And I'm sure a lot of fans would like them to go ahead and admit that they did something wrong.
Backtracking could be a way of guaranteeing we don't get an all-star game.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, we'll see what happens here and see what they do going forward. That does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Claire Tregeser of KPBS News, and Dave Rowland of San Diego City Beat, and Dean Calberth of the San Diego Daily Transcript. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.